Welcome everyone. My name is Vicky Alexiou and I'm a board member of the Hellenic Australian Chamber of Commerce and proud to be facilitating tonight's discussion for our International Women's Day event with the theme of Choose to Challenge. This is our first in-person event for the year and I want to welcome this small but socially distanced crowd. Welcome to those of you who are watching a recording of this on our social media channels as well. A big thank you and welcome to our Chamber partner, Bank of Sydney, our digital partner, Just Gold, our community partner, Hellenic Power, all the board members here today, and our event partners. We welcome you and thank you. Our commitment to achieving a truly gender equal future is now more critical than ever. We are making progress, but the job isn't even close to being done. At a corporate level, there is a gradual movement towards higher levels of women as board members, but the progress has been incremental rather than dramatic. The target of at least 40% participation remains important, and smaller organisations have a lot of making up to do. Individually, we are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions. We can choose to challenge and call out gender bias and inequality when we see it and when we see it happening to other people. This takes work, and not just from women, and not just for one day of the year. Collectively, we can all help to create an inclusive world. If you haven't yet made the commitment to yourself, it's not too late. You may be inspired by today's discussion. Some of you may choose to challenge yourselves, and some of you may choose to challenge others. Tonight, we hear from two women who are challenging and inspiring future generations. Women who are making a difference professionally and driving a positive social impact in their community. We are honoured to welcome our panellists this evening, Stella Avramopoulos and Professor Vasso Apostolopoulos. Stella was appointed CEO of Good Shepherd Australia and New Zealand in February 2018. As the leader of this community services organisation, she is committed to driving transformational change and building cross-sector coalitions for impact that can disrupt disadvantage, especially for women and children. Stella was CEO of Kildonan Uniting Care between 2008 and 2017, where she led significant growth and innovation. Her experience spans correctional services at the Victorian Department of Justice and in local government youth services. She was also a consultant for Consumer Affairs Victoria as the resident sponsor at the Berkeley Retirement Facility in 2017. Currently, Stella is President of the Victorian Council of Social Service, a member of the National Centre for Social Impact Studies Advisory Board, and part of the Victorian Volunteer Strategy Task Force. Previous appointments, because that's not enough, include the Australian Council of Social Services Board, the Office of Living Victoria's Environment and Community Task Force, the Ministerial Advisory Group addressing violence against women and children, the Victorian Government's Community Sector Reform Council, the Australian Banking Association Customer Forum, and the Australian Communication Media Authority Customer Council. Welcome, Stella. Professor Vasso Apostolopoulos is currently the Vice-Chancellor Research Partnerships at Victoria University. In response to the current global emergency, Vasso and her team at VU focused on responding to COVID-19, investigating and working on vaccines and drugs to treat the virus. Vasso is a world-renowned researcher, recognised with over 100 awards for the outstanding results of her research. She was the first in the world to develop the concept of immunotherapy for cancer in the early 1990s, which hundreds of labs around the world use today. Immunotherapy aims to boost specific immune cells and program them to kill cancer cells, and Vasso used it to develop the world's first breast cancer vaccine, with phase 1, 2 and 3 clinical trials completed. Using immunotherapy, Vasso's also developed the world's first ovarian cancer vaccine, which attracted the investment by a pharmaceutical company and has been commercialised in the Middle East. Welcome, Vasso. So I want to start with both of you. We know the theme is Choose to Challenge. We all face many challenges every day, some reflecting the intersectionality and layers of identity that we have as women, as Greek women, as mothers, as carers, as sisters, daughters. I want to start by asking how your identity has shaped your professional and your personal life and the influences that have made that up.
Well, that's a biggie for me because of the sector that I chose to go into, and I guess it's come from, I grew up in a very traditional Northern Greek family. Grandparents lived with us, auntie and uncle lived literally across the road. They didn't have children, so all of that kind of literally the village raised me. But what we are taught in our culture and community is this philotimo, this reciprocity, this welcome, and really seeing the value of each person. That absolutely changed for me in high school. A lot of migrant parents, especially the generation that I was raised in, they wanted you to run a business, be a doctor or a lawyer, except that my dad and my parents introduced me to a whole other world of vulnerable individuals that they used to help as volunteers, and that really kind of changed the trajectory of my life, of wanting to work in a field that really focused on those not as fortunate and vulnerable. Greek culture is naturally predisposed to the welcome and the care, and that for me was pretty foundational upbringing.
It's interesting you use that word philotimo because that's a very Greek concept.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to define it even to people from other cultures because it's so deeply embedded within our culture.
So obviously growing up in a Greek family, from a really young age, it was embedded into me and my brother, into our brains that we need to have an education. If you don't have an education, then what can you do? So it was from a young age, this thing was embedded. I've probably said this story lots of times before, but my dad, from the age of 5, he was teaching me my times tables. And I was at grade prep and everyone's learning how to count and I'm there saying my times tables. So he thought that if you knew maths, you would be successful in life. Because maths is the foundation of life. That's what his belief was. And I thought maths was it. I had to do maths. He also insisted that we did, I had to know my capital cities. A little 5-year-old, right? 6-year-old. So that was embedded into me as well. And then he also insisted on us learning mythology. Now, a 5-year-old is not going to sit down and listen to mythology, so I'll fall asleep within 5 seconds. I just hated mythology. But anyway, from young, it was this thing, we came to Australia for something better, we want you to go to university. So that was what they asked for, to go to university. Not particularly you have to be a doctor or a lawyer, but that's the common, what we all grew up with. But it was more like, try and achieve and also was try and be, have respect to yourself as well. So make sure you respect yourself and don't make a fool or make yourself embarrassed and make the family embarrassed. So that was another thing that was brought into us from a young age. And so I think being Greek and being respect yourself, that made the person who I am today, and that's carried forward all the way to today.
And you've gone on to cure cancer, so that's been a pretty good foundation. I feel like you'd be quite handy to have at a trivia night as well, with that knowledge of capital cities and mythology. Keep that in mind. Now, you're both leaders professionally in your organisations that you work in, and leadership is often spoken about in the same breath as authenticity. So I want to ask you both how you maintain a role of being an authentic leader when there are so many factors at play around being women in male-dominated environments and the rest of it. How do you stay true to yourselves?
In my field, there's different levels. So you go from A to E. So level A, level B, if you see who are in those levels, 50-50 male and female. At level C, you start to get a few more males and females, and then you go to level D, E, so D is associate professor, E is professor. It's predominantly male. So we have only about 10% of the professors are female. the rest are all male. So it's quite challenging being a female in that area. And then when you go up to the executive level, 10 senior executives, and there was only one female, and I'm now the second. So it's quite difficult being in a male-dominated environment and having a say and breaking through and getting in there. I think maybe one of the main reasons is that the females take time off work, they have children, and then I feel that it's a bit hard for them to get back to that, leadership roles. And there are often females are afraid to apply for a job or apply for a promotion because it's a male-dominated area. But I'm seeing that lately there is more emphasis and more understanding that we need a bit equal gender balance, and they are making an effort to try and get the balance there.
I was a little bit challenged with being described as, I've been often described as an authentic leader, and it sometimes depends the context and the environment that is actually spoken in and how that fits. For me, I've been involved in a sector where it's the kind of the big community service organisations, faith-based, Anglican, uniting, large, 100 plus years old, been around forever, white Anglo male leaders. A lot of the CEOs that are Greek, when I was the first CEO, 36, Greek chick from Reservoir, they were at the MRCs and refugee asylum seekers, and so I would literally rock up to, and the Uniting Church was beautiful for me. Kildonna was an amazing job. But I remember my first meeting at the synod, there were 40 leaders around the table, and I went there with the business services manager, we were talking budgets, and I realised, youngest by 20 years, and, very few women, and definitely the only Greek. In fact, they asked me to shorten my name because it wouldn't fit on the little tag, and they couldn't say it. They were embarrassed and uncomfortable about how they were going to pronounce it. They didn't know who we were. We sat around the table. They automatically, within 10 minutes, I realised, oh my God, they think my business manager is the CEO. And I remember thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? How are they going to take me serious? I was only 2 months in the job. And I went home and said to my husband, how am I going to lead? They don't get me, I don't get them. This is like, worlds apart. How am I going to lead this organisation that needed significant transformation and change? Who do I reach out to? And I remember one of my mentors telling me, you've just got to be you. I also had to do a lot of reading and be super, super prepared so I could get credibility and be listened to in those meetings for many, many years. But it's this pressure of, I want to be authentic, but is, 36-year-old Greek chick from Reservoir, her authenticity in a room full of 40, 50, 40 people, 50 plus, white Anglo male. So they would say, oh, you're so animated and passionate. And I would sit there going, God, when I'm at home and I'm with a room full of Greeks and no one's describing each other as animated and passionate, but everyone else describes us that way and authentic. I realised over many, many years that actually that authenticity, that ability to connect to people and be who you are and walk the talk and have integrity and be a good communicator and people person, that I learned all from my parents, that actually matters for people you are leading, particularly when you're asking them to go through significant transformation in organisation. Like, it really matters. And that connection, authenticity, and we saw it in COVID, that matters a lot.
I think it's important to be a good leader, authentic leader, to be able to encourage your people that are in your team, encourage them to improve in themselves and also to apply for promotion, etc. So instead of seeing them as a threat, because I often have seen myself, I've seen that the people that I work with, they see me as a threat because they're scared that I might take their job. But I think it's important to encourage and be a good mentor and not feel that they are a threat and be proud of their achievements.
That's so important when it comes to leadership and bringing people with you. Now, you both touched on it, but you don't get to the top of your respective games without having some challenges along the way. Are you able to share with us some of the challenges that you've had to deal with professionally over the years?
See, all throughout my life, even from primary school, there's been bullying, jealousy. You know, I was primary school, I was one of the smartest kids in class because I was good at maths. Fast forward, I was doing my PhD, and what happened there was a lot of hatred as well, because I started my PhD and there were another 25 students that started their PhD at the institute I was at the Austin, at the same time. So we all started our PhDs. They used to turn up at 9 o'clock. They had morning tea at 10:30 to 11. They had lunch break from 12 to 1. They had afternoon tea from 3:30 to 4. So 4 o'clock, they go home. How much work can they do, you know, in that day? I would be there at 7 in the morning. I wouldn't have lunch breaks, tea breaks or anything, or I'll probably just have something on my desk while I'm working. And then I'll be there till midnight, 1 in the morning. So there was a big difference in the amount of work I put in compared to them. And obviously, I moved a lot faster than them. You know, my work was successful. We started doing clinical trials in humans. We were media. I had a lot of media attention, got a lot of awards, and then there was all this jealousy. Why Vasso? What is she doing? What is she doing? Why is she getting all this favoritism? And it's like, hang on a minute. I put the hard work in. What have you done? So there was jealousy, hatred. I had letters of hatred, and it was like quite bad. But you know what? I stuck to what my parents taught me from young. Just get your education and just don't worry about whatever anyone says. So that was finished. I finished my PhD. I then went on to work. Because I was young, I started the lab straight away. At the end of my PhD, 25 years old, I ran a whole lab, with 40, 50 people. I mean, to get to that stage, you need to be, 30 years into your career. So I ran the labs, and even the people I hired, people that worked for me, they were jealous. Why Vasso? Because I was obviously the youngest. I was younger than them, but they're like, but why Vasso? Why is she achieving? What has she done to get this so quick? And it's like hard work. You know what I mean? It's just, and I was there encouraging them, even though they were jealous and there was a lot of hatred. I sort of still encouraged them and tried to help them move along as well. So that's happened, all throughout life. Even now, lots of people still hate me. There's a lot of people that hate me. They say, "Oh, she's still working on a cancer vaccine. What has she done all these years?" I mean, I hear these all the time. I mean, there's like this hatred, or I think people paint a picture of you, and no matter what you do, they still have that image about you or that perception of you. Just quickly, one other difficulty I've had to overcome in my life is I worked really hard to get to the top. So, all the way to the top level, it takes, a normal, typical person would take probably, to get from PhD, finished PhD to professor, it takes about 20, 30 years. I mean, I did that in 7 years. I'm not gifted or anything like that, it's just hard work and lots of determination. So I got to the top, travelled the world. I was just travel for fun, it was travel for work, worked all over the place. But then what happened is I got married, I had kids. So I had baby 1, baby number 2, had a few miscarriages, etc. But then I got to a point where I'm at the top of my level, but I've got these 2 babies, but I wasn't balancing. I wasn't balancing my work with my family. There was absolutely no balance. My babies, they were growing up, and I was like, oh, she crawled. Oh, she ate this, or she did this. Like, I wasn't seeing that. So I got to a point in my life where I'm like, I need to stop. I need to find a balance. So I took a 2-year career break. That was good, I mean, I did do some consulting for some companies, etc. So I sort of kept my science mind working, but I was at home with my kids, or seeing them growing up. After 2 years, having a career break, I wanted to get back to work. Now, being at that top level, you would think, and having all these awards and all these grants, etc., you would think I would just go straight back into that level. Well, I couldn't find a job at that level. No one would hire me, because to get back into that level, you need to have grants. I need to have a lab that's functional. So I go into a new environment or a new university as a package. So I bring my whole team with me, with funding as well. I didn't have any of that because I took a 2-year career break that wasn't active. So at that level, I couldn't find a job. I went down to the bottom. That was E. I went down to the D. Now I got interviews, but obviously I wasn't working. So where was my active lab? Where are my active brands? So I sort of went all the way down to the bottom, level A, which is what I was 25 years prior, or 20 years prior. I went down to the basic level, and I had to dumb down my CV. And every time I sent my CV in with 150 pages, I was overqualified for the lower level. So what I did, I made my CV 5 pages long, really simple, and then I got a job at that level, all the way down to the bottom. I started all over again, but it didn't worry me what level I went in. I just wanted to get back to work, and I did. I started. It was only a 9-month contract, 3 days a week. That's all they gave me. And then 6 years later, now I'm Vice-Chancellor at the university. So I worked my way back up. Within 6 years, I've gone all the way back to the top. So it's been a real struggle, even now, like at work, because within 6 years, I've gone all the way back to the top and exceeded professor level, so I'm at the executive level. There's the hatred of people that have been there for 25 years. What have you done? Why did you get there within 6 years? What have you done? You know, I've been here for 25 years and we're at the same level. So it's always throughout my career or school, career, work, everything, there's always been this jealousy, hatred, and the thing is, I don't know why. I mean, just because I'm working hard, I mean, you know, and I'm being successful, I mean, I think it's this tall poppy syndrome. People are not happy for your success. They're happy if they see you fail. If they see you succeeding, I just find that there's people just not happy. They just don't like me. So basically, you know, with hard work and determination, I think that's a message I want to give out, that, you know, you can achieve. And in life is not just a straight line. Yes, I've gone up, but there's been lots of ups and downs, and eventually you get there. So in life, you know, there's always something that will interfere. You go sidetrack, you go sideways, but then eventually, if you put your mind to it, you can achieve. So one thing is, I've seen in my sector, and my males who have a career break or they take time off at that top level, they leave and they come back straight back into that level. And I've seen it over and over again, and I'm thinking, why was it so difficult for me? Because they only gave me a part-time job and all the way down to the bottom. I mean, why? I think they also see the female, oh, she's got the kids to take care of, therefore she won't do her job properly. So I think that's another reason why they don't like females returning to work when they've got kids, because they're going to be distracted.
Even though the males also have children. Yeah. There's lots of lines in the room. Stella?
I had thought I've covered all the challenges in the first part of my career, because I was a corrections officer for 7 years. At 23, I got a job at Geelong Corrections, outpost to Barwon Prison. They gave me a whistle around my neck and sent me in to do my first parole assessment. The challenge was trying to explain to my grandparent, my grandmother in particular, what it was that I was doing. The truth is I didn't quite translate it to exactly what I was doing. And the fact that in order to work in Geelong, I had to move home. And so I had to come home every weekend. So when the aunties and uncles came over, I was home at least, and no one kind of knew I was living away because I was unmarried and all of that. And no one knew that it was, you know, working with prisoners. She would be able to explain, she does something in the courts. It was kind of like law, you know, so, okay, bless her. And so I let her just, whatever works. But really, you know, a young female in that system was really tough. Not because, and you know, it's the thing, it's not the guys in the green trackies and Dunlop runners that were necessarily my challenge, but, you know, a lot of the prison officers and being, being forgotten about in cells when I was doing interviews, assessments, just as a bit of a joke, being kept in a waiting area in between, two areas of a prison with the glass, with the offenders on the outside, and just made to wait while, I can look at your video screens. And I mean, it was just incredibly confronting and difficult. And we worked through it. There were a lot of young women my age who were there, and we kind of just sort of rallied together. And this is in the 90s, and things have changed a lot. But I thought that was the tough bit. And I thought, well, CEO gig, that's okay, so you're in charge of the whole organisation. And then I get confronted with just being completely a very different CEO background in a very traditional Anglo organisation. And the shame, I felt embarrassed, and so I just literally just persevered and worked harder and longer and read everything I could to just make sure that when I was at the table I didn't embarrass myself and I could prove myself over and over again. And then I got my own crossroads moment because I then was a pregnant CEO with my second, and what shocked me was not the men who questioned anything about that. I actually had women who were, are you going to be right? Are you going to go back to your job? What arrangements are you going to make? Because they're like, well, I'm not going to leave him in the car and come to the office. We're all good. My husband's doing stuff. But this sort of questioning, and I got into this sort of cycle during my pregnancy, just working. And I remember my son came 7 weeks early. I was rushed to hospital with a bleed, and I was sitting in the labour contraction started. I'm sitting in the theatre, and I've got a husband, and I'm cool, and I'm saying, get the phone and bring the laptop. And the doctor's looking at me, and she's like, what do you think you're going to do with the laptop? So I haven't done my handover notes. He's come 7 weeks early. I've got to do handover. I've got to do this and da-da. And she said, look, you're having a baby. You're not getting a laptop in here. I'll let you use the phone, make one phone call, and you're delivering a baby. And this whole thing of, like, what was I thinking, But the whole kind of pressure of, oh my God, I've got to make sure I do my job. I can't abandon the ship because of the pressure of the role that I had. And I have this incredible and, game-changing people, because none of us in leadership do anything on our own. Leadership as a solo journey is a myth. You get that job, you succeed in that job because of the team of people around you. And I had this incredible female chair who just backed me the whole way. And every time I had that kind of thought bubble, and my CEO contracts didn't have maternity clauses in them, all that kind of stuff, and she just went, that's outrageous, I didn't know that, we've got to sort that out. And that was, for me, just trusting in myself that I actually knew what I was doing. I was delivering all sorts of stuff in the organisation and achieving, but it took me a lot longer to kind of prove my own worth to myself.
Thank you. You've both been sharing a lot of really important and insightful information, so thank you to both of you. I feel like you've both touched on the assumptions around the role of women as being caregivers as well as professionals, so that, Vasso, you said there's an assumption that I couldn't do my job properly because now I was a parent, or I couldn't be pregnant CEO, and then what would I do with the baby, when there's all these assumptions around you having to care for the baby, as opposed to, well, you have a husband, you've got a network of people around you. And I feel like there are certain segments of the population where the status quo works. There's a lot of men out there that, why would we change anything when the current system works for us? And we know that as women, when we're the ones that are fighting the fight, it can be really difficult, because unless we have men coming with us on our journey and trying to fight the fight with us, we can make very, very slow progress as women fighting this on our own. So I want to ask both of you, how do we convince men to come on this journey with us? And how do we explain to them the importance of choosing to challenge, that's not just for women, but it's for men as well?
Well, as the mother of 2 boys, it's a really important thing for me. And also, I guess, it's I run an organisation that is hundreds of years old, built by women for women. And Good Shepherd, it's the first time in my life, in my career, where it feels different to walk into an organisation that's been built by women for women. And even in terms of the men who work there, and for them, what it means. And what it actually means is this myth busting that if women gain, men lose. We see, and my Director of Mission, Gendry, is here, and she'll attest to this, that actually patriarchy doesn't serve anyone any good. And when you give permission for every organisation and our environment to be, family friendly, that men become good dads and they relish the opportunity to actually feel comfortable, not to have the stereogender roles themselves around pressure to, and they take time off and they go do the childcare drop off and pick up. That is just so normal for us in organisations. So it's just constantly talking about and reinforcing that there's nothing to lose and everything to gain. And in fact, I read recently the World Health Organization did research on this, and in countries where there is greater gender inequality, men's health is worse. Their depression is higher, their suicide rates are higher, and violence is higher. So we've got to bust the myth and bring them into the conversation. And for my part, raise good men. I did another talk this week at my son's school, and they're asking about what's the proudest moment for you. And the proudest moment for me was in grade 5, parent-teacher interview. They were studying leadership, and the teacher said to me, I've got to say, Harry, want to have a read this paragraph he wrote on leadership. And she said, he's one of very few boys, he never talks about leadership, and he never put him or his in any bit of the pronouns. And that's like reinforcing more of that from a very, very young age and making it completely okay that we've got shared jobs to do, we've got a shared society and community living, and it's better for everyone to be equality, because men will benefit from that.
I think that's so important, that point you made, Stella, because we'll often say to little girls, you can be whatever you want to be, sky's the limit, no barriers. But it's really important that you've pointed out that messaging to little boys around female leadership, that it's not just male leadership, that women can be leaders too. And in your son's case, it sounds like it's probably leaning the other way because he sees you and you're his role model. So that's a great story.
Well, it's important in any organisation for there to be a balance of male and female input, because males think differently to females, but it's good to have that balance of the ideas. Also, I think we should not forget that there's a lot of females that are succeeding, but they would not have succeeded if they didn't have an understanding husband. I must say, with the amount of work I put into my work, even till today, when I still put a lot of hours working, if I was married to anybody else, I would have divorced by now. I mean, I don't think any man would be able to live with working so many hours. So, my husband is so calm, he never complains. He's very supportive.
This is being recorded, so you can hear all of this. And you can just play this back any time.
No, but he's very supportive, and if I didn't have him to support me, I don't think I would have achieved, since my married life, I don't think I would have achieved what I've achieved without his support as well, because I think it's important. So, it's not just the female succeeding on their own, it's the female succeeding with the men supporting them. But I also think even men, I don't think can succeed on their own without having an understanding wife. So I think you need both to be part of it. And so in everyone's journey, there's always the partner involved. Both brains think differently, and you can come up with better solutions.
I think that's so important around that diversity of thought. And I think men have had the benefit historically of having wives at home who take care of all the home admin and the children, and they could then focus on their careers. So it's important that we acknowledge when that happens, and then as women we acknowledge when we have a supportive husband or partner, and then men acknowledge it also. And I think it was Sheryl Sandberg who said the best career decision you can make is who you marry. Because if you've got someone who supports you unconditionally and is there for you, that's the first step to getting your career, to go like that. Now, I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions, so I might just ask one last question and then throw it to the audience. Just to finish up, so what is one important thing, big or small, that we can do to challenge the status quo, and what's your call to action for us all here today?
Work hard and never give up. Don't give up, and you'll get there. I mean, that's all. I mean, anyway, everyone can achieve. Everybody can achieve whatever you want to do. Everyone can achieve it. Some people are afraid and they don't bother, or they do something else because they think it's too difficult for them to achieve. But if you put your mind to it, you could achieve, and don't let anything bother you?
I think it's how you approach challenge. And particularly in International Women's Day and Week. Cool, I'm changing it to a week. Ginger, is that all right? I've learned, especially in corrections, future behaviour is predicted on past behaviour unless the intervention is strong enough, multifaceted enough, and sustained long enough. So it's not just the 1 week of the year, and change actually does start with challenge. The intervention, in community services and drug alcohol, the intervention, the naming up what the problem is. So we've got to name it up. We've got to talk to the fact that women, Australia's not even in the top 10 around the world of the most equal countries. So let's just start there. Name up the facts of 15% pay disparity, 21% superannuation, and on it goes in terms of this. So let's get the intervention, the uncomfortable challenge of the facts and what they speak to. Then we've actually got to look for the opportunities. Where's the opportunity? What are the resources? What are the structural policy levers, legislative levers? What are the resources, capability building we've got to do for both genders and women in particular, and especially in the post-COVID world, women, their financial recovery is taking longer, okay? Then what today's a great day for and needs to continue in terms of the dialogue and the connections people make today is the third aspect of successful change needs hope. So we need to hope as women that we've got each other and we're going to continue the journey. And men need to have hope that this isn't going to end up bad for them. It's fine, guys. It's going to be fine. So I think, the challenge, opportunity and hope.
Now I want to open up some Q&A with the audience. If there's anyone who has a question they'd like to ask Vasso or Stella, yes?
I want to know what was a challenge for you during the COVID year, the first COVID year. I don't know much about your work, Stella. With Vasso, I'm assuming it's probably anti-vaccine, but I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear your most recent challenge rather than what.
From a Good Shepherd perspective. So last year for us is best summed up in a tale of two cohorts and some things that didn't change. So what didn't change and was slightly exacerbated was family violence rates. The tale of two cohorts was we had the most disadvantaged, vulnerable people in the community that we are used to working with as a sector, and particularly women on New Start. They actually, because they got a supplement and they were able to pay for their bills, they actually started to not go to mental health services anymore. They actually started looking for work. They did not come to our services and need them because they were paying the bills and getting stuff done because of that extra supplement. 41% of Australians had some negative impact in their employment. And what we saw, and we've had so far 18,000 financial conversations with people around Australia and the services that we ran. And there's a whole new emerging cohort we've never seen before and who've never come to services like ours. And what we realised is how hard it is for them to have the conversations, to acknowledge the difficulties that they were facing and to navigate a service system sometimes that's a bit like a stitch patchwork quilt. The dignity for them, the help seeking, and 30% of those ended up in a mental health referral. Another 30% ended up with a social need identification, needed a whole bunch of other referrals and support. So there's this whole new thing that emerged. What it meant though for all of Australia, that organisations like mine have been talking about forever, is we're actually all vulnerable and you really don't know what's going to happen, and that when it happens, depending on what your resources are and what opportunities are there, people fall through the cracks and they fall through the cracks really quickly. So there was an empathy and understanding for, I guess, the work that our sector has traditionally done that really emerged for me, and now we are worried about what's going to happen in 2021 with supplements going, and 42% of the people that we have worked with are saying that they are still feeling stressed and not confident this year.
Vasso, what was yours?
What's the cure?
So, just off top about that too. So in the university sector, so we'll log into a Zoom meeting, log out, log in, log out, log in. No breaks in between. More meetings than pre-COVID. And you know, so we're working double the amount of time. And you know, I took photos or screenshots of our Zoom meetings at the beginning, and then towards the end of the year, I took some more. And if you could see our faces, completely different. At the beginning, we're all happy, and you know, we've got smiles on our faces, and then by Christmas or by November, we're all like drained out. And it was very, I think a lot of people just, we got, you know, sort of emotional, we got tired. And we also found with the students, because you know, we do everything online for the students, you know, there's 20,000 students, how many there are at the university, we had to do everything online. And we found that there was a lot of mental health issues with the students. A lot of them were international students. They worked so they could survive, but then there were no jobs for them because, and they're international students, so they weren't eligible to get any sort of funding. So it was very difficult for a lot of the students. Because of my background working on vaccines for various diseases, you know, cancer, autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes. So I've worked on a lot of vaccines for all these different, got a good track record. So I started working on developing a vaccine for COVID and also some drugs against COVID or antiviral drugs. And you know, they got out in the media likes talking about various things that I do. But I found that I got a lot of online trolling. There were people that were writing really negative things about me working on COVID vaccine, that I've ganged up with Bill Gates and I've ganged up with all these, you know, companies, and I'm trying to make money and I'm trying to inject, you know, chips in people's. You know, you sort of hear about, you know, people getting trolled online, and then you know, they have mental health issues and people commit suicide because of that. And I never sort of thought anything serious of it, but then when it happened to me, and I happened to read a lot of this negative, like really, really bad. I'm even too embarrassed to even mention what they were saying. Like it was so bad, this negativity of that I'm working on a vaccine for COVID. I mean, is that bad? But you know, these anti-vaxxers were trolling me, they were bombarding me. And you know, I really had to get help from university people because I didn't know how to handle it. So I mean, that was a negative thing about, you know, what I do. I'm here trying to do something good, and then I'm getting all these negative comments and bullying, and I was always too scared to go to work or to go anywhere because you know, my lab would be open because all the labs were shut, but the lab, because we were working COVID, we had the exemption to work. I was too scared because these people knew that I work at Victoria University. I was too scared to go because, you know, they could attack me. So it actually was quite bad. So, you know, again, I get this bullying and jealousy and hatred, and I don't know, it's just been a constant battle. But despite that, you know, we've got some really good antiviral drugs, which we're going to start some clinical studies. This is for treating COVID. We don't have any cases here, so we're going to end up doing them overseas. And we've got a vaccine. We've got, you know, the Greek community actually did quite a lot of help, and we've got some fundraising happening. We've got some donations, and also other people, not just the Greek community. We've got some funding, and we're able to progress the vaccine. You know, what I want to go into sort of vaccines night. We could do another night for that. But you know, we have progressed quite far with it.
Wow, thank you. Now, I think there was another question.
Since you mentioned the Greek community, the last month was the month that the Greek Me Too started. Women just started talking about their stories of harassment, sexual harassment, bullying at work. And it's the first time that Greece comes across that wave, and everyone is in shock. Most of the people try to avoid the conversation, which has already happened here and is happening again. Any messages for those women?
I love going to Greece. I love going to Greece. I go there every year. It's beautiful. I love Greek people. But if I'm there too long, and in sometimes, you know, I have these conversations, and you know, love relatives and all the people there. But you can, I hear that, and even to the point where I am constantly described as sort of, oh, look what Sean Stella does. She's a social worker. But I'm not. And I think, social workers are great, but I'm not. It's this whole sort of, they can't really comprehend that I have a job that's higher than my husband's and I'm the main breadwinner in the family. My uncles struggle. They kind of don't want to talk about it. And I get exactly what you're talking about. But I think for us Greek females in the diaspora, maybe there's a story there around, the success that you talk about that Greek women have overseas for women in Greece could be for them the fact that there is, stunning cultural heritage that we have and cultural norms and things that we have continued in Greece and America and Canada. But one of them is not being submissive and unequal. That's not that old traditional patriarchal thing that comes through. It's not the Greek part of what we want to celebrate and to really kind of bring out the strengths of our culture and who we are, but in a way that highlights that you are actually compromising our confidence, our contribution and our connection in the way you are behaving and continually put us in that pigeonhole, and just to kind of be there in solidarity with them, to reach out, to be mentors, to, in the world of Zoom, connect with them. And so many of you, I bet, mentor other women, particularly younger women, and I think to do more of that. And I think they just got to have solidarity with others to really give them hope.
And they should believe in themselves as well. They could get out and do things as well and have belief in themselves.
I want to thank you both, Stella and Vasso, for sharing your journeys. It's been absolutely amazing listening to you. So I want to tap into your wisdom really, and starting probably with Vasso, when you spoke about taking the career gap, and it was only 2 years where you took some time out to spend with the children, and then you had to work backwards pretty much. So from hindsight now, is there any advice you have to other women or younger women or women who are having families, etc., in terms of career and continuance? Would you have done anything different, or is there some advice you would give women about setting themselves up to be able to progress like the men you talked about who jump out and jump in where they stopped?
I get this question asked a lot. Should I have kids? I don't want to have kids. I don't want it to interrupt with my career. So they have questions, and then I say to them, just have kids. Don't not have kids because you want to focus on your career. You could do both. It's a lot better these days than what it was. So when I had my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 15. When I had her, 3 months later, I took 3 months maternity leave. I went back to work and I asked the director of the institute, can I come back 4 days? I want to spend 1 day a week with my daughter. And his reply was, no, you cannot come 4 days a week because you run the whole lab here, the whole unit. You need to be here 5 days a week, because if I need you and I want to come down, I want you to be here. I don't want you to not be here. Mind you, I would work all day, all night, 7 days a week. He never saw that, but he saw the 1 day that I wanted to work from home. But what I ended up doing, because I was so annoyed and frustrated, because there was no, maternity leave, come back to work, no options of taking time off or coming back 4 days a week or working 1 day from home. But what I ended up doing is, because I had accumulated so many sick leaves for all the years I had worked, I used to take every Thursday as a sick leave. Because, yeah, it's okay. So I used to take every Thursday I was sick. So one Thursday I had a headache, the Thursday after I had a backache, the Thursday after that I had, depression, or things that. So I used to make up things, and then by the end of the year, he would come down on a Wednesday and say, "Okay, Vasso, I'll see you Friday." I said, "You got the gist of it." But that was then. That's what happened, and I had to do that. I mean, I wanted to stay 1 day a week. Mind you, that 1 day a week that I was at home, I was still on work, doing work stuff. But I just wanted to spend 1 day a week with my child. But now, these days, it's different. I mean, there are better working arrangements. So, there's more awareness. There are programs for women to come back to work. Unlike when I tried to get back to work, it was difficult. Your question was, what will I do different if I was to do all this all over again? I probably wouldn't do anything different because I've learned the hard way. If I didn't learn this hard way, then I wouldn't be who I am today. I mean, I am the person I am because I'm more stronger, I'm more resilient, nothing bothers me, So I think what has got me through a lot of difficulties is what I've gone through in my life. So, I think you learn and you become the person you are throughout this journey. But what I tell the younger people is, just you could balance both. I mean, these days you can balance both, take advantage of that. You can have a career and you can have a baby. Don't have a career first, then a baby, or first baby, then career. Just have a baby. And balance your family and your work.
And I think we've got to address the structural and legislative levers here. There are structural barriers for women, and that is the sort of multifaceted opportunity building that we've just got to do. You ask any woman who has ever had to juggle and go back to work in the same role with children, you are actually a better worker, manager, leader. I didn't have the job. There's no part-time, there's no job sharing CEO roles. And you can't even go back 4 days a week. So for me, I was fortunate to have an incredible husband who was more than happy to support my career, and he loved staying home. He's fantastic at home with the kids. But those structural levers around workplace change and reform have to start really quickly. Without that, there are just barriers for women.
I want to say thank you to Stella and to Vasso for being here, bringing your whole selves here, and for the work that you do every day in trying to advance the cause of women professionally and personally, and do your bit for making society a better place and challenging and being role models for those around you. So I want to say a big thank you for being here today. There's some fantastic insights from this discussion, and I really appreciate you being here to share with everyone. So thank you very much. I'd like to hand over to CEO Mirto Michailas to say a few words.
First of all, let me congratulate the panelists. We've heard some great stories today, and I've grown with 7 sons in the family, and ended up with a wife and 2 daughters, and learned the hard way to support ladies in life. So hearing your tales and how difficult it's been for you, comparing it with some of our stories of men, I must admit that it takes a lot more strength and courage, the ladies in the room, to get there. So congratulations, and your stories are touching, and let's all have the strength that we can get from these stories and move on. In terms of the Hacci and Bank of Sydney, this is an important day for me. I think the last event I attended a year ago, COVID, was this one. And this is the first visit since that day. And me and my wife, we thought it was proper to restart life without COVID, hopefully, at this event. And let's hope that we will meet again next year and enjoy more lessons of life and how to get better at it as we move on. Thank you very much.
I'll now ask Fotini Kypreos, who is the chair of Hacci, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Stella and Vasso. It was incredible to listen to you again. I've heard your speaking stories a couple of times, and each time you speak, I learn more and get a bit more inspired and feel completely useless in my achievements to date. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet tonight and pay my respects to their elders past and present. It's hard to believe it's been a year and 5 days exactly since we had a Hacci event in the flesh. We had a huge International Women's Day celebration last year at the gorgeous Hellenic Museum. There were over 100 people there, and lockdown came just a handful of days later. 370 days ago was our first lockdown, and life changed in a way that none of us had ever expected. And over many years of Hacci hosting International Women's Day celebrations, I've recited many statistics at each of those events about the huge double-digit disparity percentages between men and women in all facets of life. And unfortunately, there's still much to be done, and we're moving at an absolutely glacial pace. And I think, Stella, you hit the nail on the head that it's a systemic issue, and throwing money at programs and creating policies in the current structure just is not going to work. The structure has to change. And so I'm also, on one hand, disappointed that it's taken so long, but there is hope, and I'm encouraged about the progress being made. There are a lot more voices gathering strength about these issues, and I think we all still have to do our part as community organisations and as professional and business women within our organisations and families about breaking down some of these gender biases that we heard about earlier. So many thanks to my Hacci board colleague Vicky Alexiou for hosting a great panel discussion tonight. Again, many thanks to Hacci board members that are here, our main partner Bank of Sydney. Mirto and Lisboa flew in just to be with us tonight, so we're really thrilled to see you again. Again, I'd like to thank our digital partner Just Gold, Sophia, Kiriako, Penny and the team. You're all amazing and instrumental in helping Hacci actually run digital campaigns, not only for International Women's Day, but keeping Hacci alive and well and at the forefront of community communication and connectiveness throughout COVID in Victoria and across Australia. I'd like to thank our event partners, More Australia, Procal, Lainey is here tonight. Again, thanks Lainey and your team. Sweet Greek for providing us with delicious little meze boxes, and you're all getting take-home toowoomba on the way out. And a very warm welcome to our new partner from Greece, Palirria. So thank you very much to our new partner, event partner from Greece. And also our Community Partner Hellenic Power. John, thanks for your continued support and for being here. So finally, a last thank you to everybody for being here and taking the time and choosing to challenge gender bias and inequality, and for actively advocating and participating in events like tonight. There are many events on this month. Get along with it, talk about it, and get the conversations started and keep them going. So thanks very much.
I'll just lastly say thank you to Dina for her immense effort. I can't see her, but I know she's here, for her immense effort in coordinating tonight's event, and to our chair for Dingy, to our board members Alex and John for being here tonight as well. Thank you for joining us tonight in person after a year. I really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you again to Stella and Vasso, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, everyone.